Good afternoon, everyone. All right, good afternoon, everyone. All right, good to see you all on this wonderful February day, Founders Day celebration that's going on this week. As many of you all know, we appreciate you all coming out. We have a pretty diverse crowd here, so quick roll call. Any parents here? Wow, parents representing, very nice, I like that. Current Morehouse students. All right, very nice, nice mix. Morehouse alumni. Any Morehouse alumni? All right. HBCU alumni. All right, a few more. All right, good enough, good enough. Did I miss anybody? Other alumni. College degree. Okay, fair enough. But we definitely appreciate your finding it not robbery to spend your time with us for this symposium and town hall meeting, which is very special for a variety of reasons, which we'll explain a bit later. My name is Bryant Marks. I'm an associate professor of psychology and executive director of the Morehouse Research Institute here at Morehouse. Originally from Queens, New York, 1994, graduate of Morehouse College, graduate studies at Michigan. My work is in the area of the psychology of black males, broadly defined, with an emphasis on STEM education and masculinity. And so I'll be serving as your MC/moderator today. I'm very excited about this panel in Town Hall. We're mixing it up a bit at lunch earlier today, and I think you all are in for a treat, a true treat. So, Founders Day Symposium Town Hall meeting, innovation and reform in educating black students, increasing flow through the academic pipeline. Now, just at the outset, we intentionally use this phrase, the academic pipeline, because oftentimes when you mention education reform, folks think K-12 exclusively. And we will be covering K-12, but we are also going to expand that to higher education for reasons which I'll, again, explain a bit later. But we're trying to look at the full pipeline because the pipelining is actually leaking at multiple points when it comes to best practices for educating black students. So a bit of an overview today. I'm going to talk a bit about education, briefly. Then some questions to the panelists. I'll moderate and pose some questions. We'll then have questions panelists from the audience via clickers, which I will explain to you in a minute. And then we will have questions from the audience via floor mics. And so we'll, as we get closer to the Q&A period, I'll provide a bit more guidance there. So each of you should have a remote response card, which we affectionately call clicker, in your hand. All right, everybody hold up your clicker. Let's see. Everybody got one? Okay. If you don't have one, there's some in the back. Now, this is pretty easy. For those of you who used to watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and they would say, ask the audience, that's what we're going to be doing. So you just click in, right? It's infrared, so you don't have to point it at the screen necessarily. It'll pick it up. But the notion is I'm going to pose some questions on the screen. I want you to answer as honestly as you can. There are no right or wrong answers except for one question. So this is your opinion. Now, the last answer that you enter is the one that counts. So you can change your mind. So you're looking at your clicker, you press 1, you say, oh no, I think it's 2. Press 2, and 2 is the answer that will count, okay? And so I'll tell you when to click in and so forth. So this is part of the audience interaction. And eventually, we're going to, for those who are watching via live stream, because we are streaming this live at morehouse.edu, in our next session, the goal is in April to have it where people can remotely participate in this as well. So the audience responses as well as those out in the cyber world participating as well. We need to integrate technology, okay? All right, so some questions for you. This is our first question. And I want to, hold on a second here. Reset this. So again, all you're gonna do is just, okay, polling is open. We've seen that green in the top right. Now, for those of you who are in Georgia, all right, so this is just for the Georgia residents, did you vote yes or no to allow state or local approval of public charter schools upon the request of local communities? This was the ballot initiative in November on Election Day. So just, do you remember whether you voted yes or no? This is pretty much how it's worded. For those who can remember, go ahead and click in. So if you did not vote in Georgia, no need to answer right now. Okay, we just want to grab this data real quick. Okay, see some folks. All right, 38, 39. You can see the count in the top where it says responses. All right, we're at 39. I'll take 39. All right, so next question. Everyone can click in on this one. The academic achievement of black students attending charter schools is blank than black students attending traditional public schools. What is your personal opinion? 1, it's much worse. 2, worse. 3, about the same. 4, better. 5, much better. 6, not sure. Academic achievement of black students attending charter schools is blank than black students. Again, this is black students in particular. All right, I'll take the 130. Let's keep that moving. Next question. I'm going to show you the results shortly. How difficult or easy is it for you to get credible, keyword is credible, information on the quality of schools, that is how good or bad they are, in your neighborhood? Very difficult, number 1. Somewhat difficult, 2. Somewhat easy, 3. Or very easy. So in your hometown, your neighborhoods where you all are from, if you just wanted to find out how good the local schools were, how easy or difficult might that be? Okay. All right, I'll take that. Next, how informed are you regarding the positive and negative aspects, that is the pros and cons, of charter schools versus traditional public schools? 1, not at all informed. You don't know much about it at all. 2, somewhat informed. 3, pretty well informed. 4, very informed. Okay, if you were comparing charter and traditional public schools, how informed do you feel you are? All right, 129. Oh, y'all getting quicker. All right. Oops, sorry. Wasn't supposed to see that. All right. The 6-year, it's the last question. The 6-year college graduation rate, I'm sorry, typo, is blank for African American males and blank for African American females. So number 1 would be 15% for males, 35% for females. Number 2 would be 25% for males, 40% for females, and so on. 6-year college graduation rate. This is the one that actually has a correct answer. All right, we'll take it at 1. Oh, still going. Okay. All right. So, well, let's start at the top. So we're going to go back and look at your responses, and I wanted to do this so that the panelists. I'm a researcher, data-driven, so the panelists can sort of see where you are, and you could see where the attitudes of each other. So, did you vote yes or no? 62% yes, 38% no. That's about right in terms of it passing in the state of Georgia. So this seems to be somewhat representative. It passed by a pretty good margin. So for those of you who are Georgia residents, you voted to support this particular ballot initiative. Now, your data on the achievement of black students attending charter school is, and as a researcher, I love data like this. This is what you call a normal shaped curve, right? Or a bell curve. For some of you, that has a negative connotation due to certain scholars, if you call them that. But nonetheless, bell-shaped curve, normal curve, where you have the bulk of responses toward the middle. Now, for many of you all, you're saying that charter schools may be about the same, and then you have some trailing off. So panelists, I want you to pay attention to this and try to incorporate it as we talk, because we're going to be talking about innovation. And innovation often comes, not always, but often, through charter schools. Next, we asked you how difficult or easy it is for you to get credible information on the quality of schools, how good or bad they are. Again, I like the normal shaped curve, some diversity there, and the bulk of responses were in the middle, somewhat difficult to somewhat easy. Only 19% said very easy. That's a potential challenge. That is a potential challenge, okay? So I'm sure it's duly noted by our panelists. And some said that in terms of being very difficult, only 11%. Again, challenge on that side as well. Next, how informed are you regarding the positive and negative aspects, pros and cons, of charter schools versus traditional public schools? Many of us have attitudes about one or the other, but how much evidence do we have to support our particular attitude? So this is about how well informed you are, okay? And basically, 67%, if you combine responses 1 and 2, are saying that they're not very well informed at all, okay? With about 33% saying that they are. But I wonder if I asked you, those who responded with 1 or 2, about your opinion, how strongly you might feel about your opinion, even though you admit you may not be well informed. All right, there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance that's going to go on for some of you all while we're here. So we are going to push you in certain ways, okay? Finally, 6-year college graduation rate, African-American males versus females. All right, B, number 2, 25% for males, 40% for females. That is actually incorrect. For those who said number 3, that's closer to the truth. All right, 35% male, black males, 46% African-American females. Now, Dr. Tolson is in the room, so I will qualify my data and say there is, we don't do the best job, K-12 or in higher ed, in terms of transfer students and tracking people over time. So sometimes these graduation rates, or if you label as dropout rates, don't accurately capture everything that's going on. But again, this is a key point I want us to remember as we engage in our conversation. Okay, so at this point, I would like to just say a few framing words before we introduce the panelists. Now, in education on education, is anybody in here a teacher? Teachers? Okay, all right. So, teachers in the room. What does it mean to teach? To impart knowledge or skill. To give instruction, from the Old English to show or to point out. So teaching is the mere impartation of knowledge. It's a giving of knowledge. To profess, I'm a professor. Well, what do I profess? What does that mean? Any professors in the room? College professors. All right. Where are my colleagues? Okay. To declare openly, to profess, to announce or affirm, avow or acknowledge. From the Latin, and forgive my Latin, profitare, which means to confess openly. Again, putting something out there. To train, right? Some of y'all may say, when you see a little boy or girl acting up, that child don't have any home what? Training. What does that mean? To develop or form the habits, thoughts, or behavior of a child or other person by discipline and instruction. To draw out and manipulate in order to bring to a desired form. So that's a little closer to where we want to be. And finally, the gold standard is to educate, which is to qualify by instruction or training for a particular calling, practice, etc. True education is not about imparting knowledge, dates, facts, and figures. It is about pulling out, from the Latin educare, educere, which means to lead out or bring out that which is within. So true education speaks of passion, purpose, calling, okay? Not in the, we use vocation in a parochial sense as if it's some sort of passive trade, but true vocation is about calling, vocal calling. So when we educate someone, we are exposing them to a body of knowledge that should spark some passion, purpose, or calling. It is about human development. So I'll wrap this up with a quote from, what is nice about February? It's what? Black History Month. Let me park parenthetically real quick. Carter G. Woodson starts Black History Month. How did it start? As Black History what? Week. All right, now, some black folks think there's a conspiracy. Why is Black History Month the shortest month of the year? Well, because it started out as a week, right? And then it was expanded to a month. Now, that was because Carter G. Woodson, in homage to Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's birthday, chose February. But this quote, I think, encapsulates the points that I were making, and then we'll bring the panel up. To educate, truly educate the Negro, we must find out exactly what his background is, his past, what he is today, his present, what his possibilities are, his future, and how to begin with him as he is, and make him a better individual of the kind that he is. This is not about converting. This is about development. Okay? All right, I have an iPhone. This is iPhone 5. Yes, I bought into the marketing scheme of Apple. I had multiple iPhones, right? iPhone 1 comes out. This is the 5th version. This is still an iPhone. It's just a better version of itself. I'm not trying to make this a BlackBerry. We're just trying to improve it. That's what education should do. And with that, I would like to transition to our introductions of the panel. Now, in your the programs, you have the full bios. I'm going to read a couple of sentences from each, say a few words, and bring them up one by one. Our first panelist, Dr. Ivory Tolson, is an associate professor at Howard University. Dr. Tolson, could you come forward, please? Is an associate professor at Howard University, senior research analyst of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and current editor-in-chief of the Journal of Negro Education. Dr. Tolson has more than 40 publications and research presentations in many states across the country and across the world. A quick note about Dr. Tolson. I consider him to be a consummate scholar, one who does not get caught up in rhetoric or emotions, but will look at the data in a fair and balanced way and try to sift out where the truth lies. All right, so if you haven't heard of him already, please follow his work. He writes for The Root and for at thegrio.com. So please show your appreciation for Dr. Ivory Tolson. Next, we will invite to the stage Dr. Howard Fuller. Dr. Howard Fuller is Distinguished Professor of Education and founder and director of the Institute for the Transformation of Learning at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The organization began in August of 1995. The mission of the Institute is to support exemplary educational options that transform learning for children while empowering families, particularly low-income families, to choose the best option for their children. Now, many of you may know Dr. Fuller. How many of you have seen the documentary film Waiting for Superman? Okay. Now, he, in one of those clips, captured many of our attention when he talked about the dance of the lemons, where teachers that are low performing are swapped around from school to school, but not necessarily dismissed. And he also talked about being a superintendent and some of the pushback he got from folks in the room when he decided that it was appropriate to let some ineffective teachers go. And I'm sure his comments will tap into that a bit more. Can we please show our appreciation for Dr. Howard Fuller? Next, we invite to the stage the Reverend Dr. Marvin L. Sapp, Senior Pastor of Lighthouse Full Life Center Church, award-winning gospel recording artist and board president of Great Schools, Incorporated. Dr. Sapp is focused on national and local support and partnerships for the performing arts and education program evaluation. He is a passionate orator and biblical teacher who desires to be a living epistle glorifying our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, both in word and in deed. Now, it was interesting. We were at lunch, and Dr. Sapp said, well, you know, I'm on the panel, but I'm just going to listen to these experts and so forth. This man has started a charter school. And by virtue of everything it takes to do that, he has some deep level of expertise. Even if it's at the case study level, he can provide insight for us of what it takes to start an innovative, quality charter school. Let's show our appreciation for Dr. Sapp. And now, Morehouse class of 1979. Master's degree in theological studies and education, and a doctorate in education from Harvard University. Former director of the Foundation Relations at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and executive dean of George Washington University. It most recently served as the executive director of the White House Initiative for HBCUs. Born in Philadelphia, the son of a preacher and a teacher. Our next guest is married to Dr. Carol S.P. Wilson. They have twin daughters, Ayana, Aisha, and their son, Jay. Would you all please stand and help me welcome to his first Founders Day Symposium, the newly elected president of Morehouse College, Dr. John Sylvanus Wilson. And we just want to point out some folks, special guests we have in the house. We mentioned Mrs. Dr. Wilson. First Lady, if you could please stand and give us this quick wave. These are new folks. First Lady of Morehouse College. Also, we have President Wilson's mother who's here. If she could wave. Okay, family. His sister and his son Jay. Can you both stand as well? So what we need to understand as First Family is this is a family commitment at Morehouse. All right, so everybody's clear on that part, right? We love you and embrace you all, but we thank you for sharing Dr. Wilson with us. Okay. Also want to recognize Dr. Charles Willie, if you just raise your hand, sir, who served as a mentor for Dr. Wilson during his days at Harvard. Please show your appreciation for Dr. Willie. And last but not least, we have Dr. John Hope, who is actually the chair of the advisory board for Richard. See that? Dr. Richard Hope, some relation, who is the chair of the Morehouse Research Institute Advisory Board. Would you please wave Dr. Hope and your lovely wife as well, Mrs. Hope. Thank you so much. You know, that history we had yesterday, I'm thinking in historical terms,
Yeah,
for those of you who were at convocation on yesterday. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is sort of switch gears and turn to the panelists and get a sense from them when they are looking back over not only their personal journeys academically, but pipeline issues as it relates to African Americans. So these first couple of questions I'd like each of you to answer, and then I'll become more specific per panelist. So if you could you tell us if you believe at this point that African American students are reaching their full academic potential? And if not, why not? So do you think African American children are reaching their full academic potential? And if not, why not? Dr. Tolson, we can start on the end and work our way down.
Right now, they're not reaching their full academic potential. And that's because the experiences of African American students are very different from the experiences of students of other races in the United States. The Department of Education released a report last year that cited several different disparities in the experiences of black students and their counterparts at other schools. One had to do with the fact that black students are more likely to be in the school with a less rigorous curriculum. So they're more likely to be in the school without a college-bound curriculum, and schools that omit key courses that's required for universities and colleges like Morehouse. Second, black students are subject to harsher disciplinary procedures. And so we have black students are about 5 times more likely to pass your metal detector when going into school. They're more likely to be disciplined for things that frankly white kids aren't disciplined for very often. Black males, a survey of black males that were between the ages of 13 and 15 showed that 60% of them had been suspended at least once throughout their academic careers. And that stems from a lot of different things that I don't have time to go into now, but I've written extensively about that. The third has to do with resource inequities and the fact that black students are more likely to have lesser experienced teachers, teachers who are paid less, teachers who take more days off. This was actually quantified. And so all of these come together and present some challenges for us. Now the good thing is that there's been a lot of misrepresentation about how we are dealing with that. You know, look, there's been things like there's 50% of black kids dropping out. That's not true. The true dropout rate among African American males is not 50%. It's about 11% as measured by the Department of Education. There's a lot of other myths and misconceptions that I've challenged. But we do have our challenges ahead of us. So I'll stop there and we'll talk more about solutions in the next go round, I'm sure.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sapp?
I totally agree with Dr. Tolson. As well as I would also like to add, I think one of the major challenges that we have in the school system as well is we don't have teachers, if you will, that have the same passion that they did when many of us were younger. They had a passion for us, and they would get more or less in our butts as it pertains to making sure and ensuring that we would do the things that were necessary in order for us to achieve and accomplish our goals. That's no longer there. I can remember teachers when I was in high school and middle school who would check us, literally. But because of the simple fact that our kids are different and also that the teachers are different, and because of the fear factor that's there, that's become a problem as well.
Dr. Wilson?
I would say the answer is no, with emphasis. I mean, and you've heard 2 great testimonies to that, and with Dr. Tolson sharing a lot of great data. What I will say about this is the answer to the question is no, emphatically, because, and that's one of the reasons why at the White House about a year ago, we announced a new White House initiative on educational excellence for African Americans, a special initiative to address this very problem. And to underscore the answer of no and to add to what has been said, just 2 data points that essentially drove the President and the Department of Education to have a ceremony in the Oval Office and to sign this new executive order. First data point is only 4% of African Americans are college ready in a broad range of courses by the time they graduate from high school. 4%. Now, that cuts across all classes. All right, and that was one of the data points. If you go on the White House website and look up the new executive order or that executive order, you will see that data point in that executive order. A second data point that we illuminated to justify this new initiative is that the average African American 12th grader is basically reading on an 8th grade level. Those 2 data points were drivers in the creation of the new executive order, and they say with emphasis that African American students are not reaching their full potential. Thank you.
I guess I was, first of all, I wanted to say to Dr. Willie, the problems that you talked about in Milwaukee are worse than when you came there and did your study. I know that don't help any, I just want you to know that. You know, I do want to say no, but I also want to say some kids are. And a part of the problem, I think, is trying to determine in our community which kids are, in fact, at least given the opportunity to reach their highest potential and which ones are not. And I do think there is a class issue in our community that we tend to not want to discuss. And because I think the problems that impact black people in this country are both race and class. And the reality is that some of our kids, by the nature of their class, may be in that 4%, although probably some poor kids are in there as well. So I think what we got to figure out is which are the kids that are in the deepest problems, you know, in our community. Which kids are, you know, close. Because if we don't start looking at it that way, we will treat our community as if there's a generic solution, when in fact, you know, we have different kids who are experiencing different things, and that's one of the things I think, you know, we have to struggle to deal with as a community.
All right, so it seems like the theme is that they're not reaching their full potential, at least not all of them are. So when you think about possible solutions or best practices that are out there, so whether it's K-12 or higher education, what are some characteristics of schools that are effective in educating black students? Whether you're talking about size, structure, teacher training, uniforms, whatever angle you want to take, if you can identify a few characteristics that you feel have been shown or you believe will be effective if they were scaled up. Anyone can respond.
Yeah, and we can go a lot of different ways with that. I want to talk a little bit about expectations because I think that there's an expectation gap. And there's an experience that I had yesterday. I was on a panel with 3 high school students who were involved in a college preparatory program in New York. And someone who worked for New York City Public Schools got 30 African-American males together from across the district and put them through this very robust program. And so the kids were talking about the changes that they had, and the program really reminded me kind of a junior Morehouse type of program because it was, you know, it was all about having that scholarly image, and so they had a lot of artifacts like that. And so the audience got the opportunity to ask some questions, and the principal asked one of the kids, it said, you know, how did your peers respond to these changes that you've made? And the kid said, oh, my peers love it. You know, all of my friends, they knew I had a lot of potential, and they see that this program is really bringing out a lot in me that they always knew I had. And instead of the principal being happy about that, she seemed dissatisfied, like she didn't get the response that she wanted. And so she went on to say that, well, in my school, I have these challenges of the kids, and quite frankly, their parents, not really valuing education. So, you know, why do you think that is? And the kid asks very respectfully, why do you believe that they don't value education?
It's powerful.
Very powerful. But it speaks to an attitude that I encounter and confront all the time when I'm working with schools. They haven't really taken the time to understand the nuances of these kids' environment and what they really need to be successful. And they hang on to these stereotypes and these attitudes about these kids and their communities. And so they're not really in the position to harness the natural resilience that they have. And so that's one thing that really needs to be confronted. And a lot of it starts with us because we repeat a lot of the worst things about ourselves a lot. I find that when I engage in the process of myth busting, my biggest opposition comes from our people. Because if I say something that doesn't sound bad enough about black people, they doubt it. But there could be a scholar that looks nothing like me and nothing like most of us in here who will say the worst thing about black people, and we just embrace it. And so, and all of that, I think, feeds into a vulnerability that our kids have when they walk into the academic environment where they're being taught by a teaching force that's 80% white.
I want to piggyback on that. You know, Ivory's talking about high expectations for the kids. I think we also need, I think those environments that have had high expectations for the kids show better results by and large, but also it should not be forgotten that many of those same environments, and I'll just say Jeffrey Canada having one of them, and there are others like that, they also have high expectations for the faculty and staff. And so that means, in general, it is a culture of accountability. And I dare say that's relevant for K through 12. It's also relevant for higher education as well. People need to expect to pay a price for mediocrity and failure. Okay? And in too many of our educational environments, precious as they are, you have people who are, and I'll just speak about faculty and staff now because I think Dr. Tolson was eloquent on the students and that point, but I really do think there are too many faculty and staff who are underperforming, who are checked out, who are probably worse than mediocre, and they pay no price for it. All right, there is nobody managing the place well enough to exact the price for it, and therefore it persists, and the people who do pay a price are our kids, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we understand that our kids are not from Mars. You know, I mean, the same thing that you would need to create a great school for white people, we need that to create a great school for black people. So that if you come to a school that is rule bound and not mission driven, it's not going to be a good school. If you come to a school that doesn't have quality teachers, it's not going to be a good school. If you come to a school that does not deal with data and drives decisions based on data, it's not going to be a good school. So my point is that we have to create for our children, you know, like Jeffrey Canada says something that spoke to me. He said, when people ask me, what is it that we ought to do for our kids, I ask, what do rich people do for their kids? And when you start asking those kind of questions, you start getting at what is it that we need to do to help our children. Obviously, we need people who can relate to our children, who care about our children, who feel deeply about our children. But you can feel deeply and not have the capacity to educate them. Just feeling deeply is not enough.
Right.
You have to be knowledgeable about what it is you're talking about. Yeah. You have to know how to impart knowledge. We got to create schools where kids have adequate resources. where we have the technological stuff that kids need to be able to function in today's world. So I guess my point is, I want us to be asking for our kids what anybody who's going to create a great school would ask for their kids. And we have to do it, and we have to do it relentlessly. And at the end of the day, we do have to send a message to our kids, and that is, nothing precious comes easily. And you're not going to get where we need to go and not have to work for it. And so as we talk about these things that we all got to do better, we also have to insist that our kids do better. We got to put some responsibility on our kids themselves to do what it takes to make a difference.
I have to agree with everyone on the panel. My wife and I, my wife passed away a few years back, we had a passion to want to see young people in our community do well. We looked around and saw that our school system wasn't doing exactly what it needed to do. We were products of our public school system, and being products of our public school system, we looked at what was going on and we said, this is some foolishness in essence. And because of that, our kids, because, you know, again, having the opportunity to have some level of financial security, they were able to go to the best schools. And I looked around and saw what was going on at the school that they were going to. And I said, why can't we do something like this in our community? And so we took that step, and it took us 7 years to pull it off. She passed away 2 years before she got the opportunity to see her vision come to pass. But the fact of the matter is that we made a decision that the same types of things that the schools that were in the urban or in the suburban communities were experiencing and had, we felt like we can have in the urban community. So of course, I made sure that I spent the money that was necessary to make sure they had a wonderful computer lab. I made sure I spent the money that was necessary to make sure that each of our students had iPads. Of course, they had to wear uniforms and things of that nature to school because, you know, kids get to tripping. That's the best word I can use. You know, they get to tripping when, you know, one child has this on and the other child has that on. But, you know, we did what was necessary in order to make sure and to ensure that they understood that they were valued. And then also, as they also said, we put the mandate on the teachers, as well as the parents, that this is a partnership, that the only way that we're going to be able to educate these babies and to make sure that they're productive and can do what they need to do in the future is that it's going to take the parents and the teachers coming together and making sure that they do what's necessary to bring it to pass.
And Dr. Sapp, while you're making that point, could you walk us through just a couple of the challenges in terms of the steps? So whether it's local school boards, the State Department of Education, whatever those steps are, that you said 7 years, that's a long time.
Took us 7 years.
And what are some critical components to that?
Oh God, this could take all day. Just talking about the process. First off, I think. Well, matter of fact, I could just talk, right?
Yeah,
we all right, cool.
Please.
Everybody here cool, right? We straight. Okay. One of the major challenges that we had getting our charter piece off the ground was the simple fact that I learned that the charter school concept is more business than it is education. For some. And when I started to learn that, I didn't have to learn it because initially it was not my responsibility. It was something that my wife was doing. And, you know, my job was to sing, preach, bring home the check so she can fund her vision. After she passed away, I had to take on the mantle and try to bring this vision to pass. So there were a lot of roadblocks that we got being African Americans trying to educate our children, doing it from a nonprofit position. Not doing it for a for-profit, but doing it from a nonprofit position. Got turned down by many authorizers in our community to the point where the superintendent of our public school system called my wife and said to me, listen, we want you to stop going about the charter school piece because they really felt intimidated by what we were trying to offer and wanted us to come in and do a center of innovation. Centers of innovation in Grand Rapids, Michigan were schools that were sort of like charter schools, but we had to use the pool of teachers that they had. Initially, we went into that and decided to do it after my wife went through the process of 1 year of being trained as a principal. 30 days before the school was about to start, they sent us the teachers that they wanted us to use for our program. And they were the worst teachers on the face of the earth. None of them were qualified. And I made a conscious decision, even after spending $250,000 personal dollars of mine, that I said, I'd rather throw this money away than open up something that's not going to succeed. With that being said, our program was very different because, again, one of the things that they took out of schools when I was a kid, I mean, I'm music. That's what I do. I sing. That's my passion. And the first thing I noticed that they took out of the school system when they began to do budget cuts is they cut out the arts. And to me, that was mind-blowing because when you do a statistical study, you'll find that children that have the arts as a part of core curriculums, they test 4 to 5 times higher than those that don't. And it's mind-blowing that that's the first thing they took out of the school system. They don't take the sports out because sports bring finances to the school, but they take out the thing that make us think differently. And urban children, African-American children, are artsy. So what we wanted to open was a school that implemented the arts in core curriculums. And after my wife passed, honestly, the wind was out of my sails. We had been turned down. But then I made a conscious decision that there was no way possible that I was going to allow her dream to die with her. So I pulled together another group of individuals, and I was smart enough to look at all of the charter schools in the area, specifically one that was extremely successful, and I decided to hire all of his people. Yeah, everybody that was on his staff, from attorneys to what have you, I hired every last one of them in order to make it happen for us because they knew what was necessary to get it done. So after hiring them, we were able to receive an authorization from one of the universities in the state of Michigan to open up the Grand Rapids Ellington Academy of Arts and Technology, better known as Great School. And I'm grateful to God that He's allowed us to be able to do it because it was a lot of work. I mean, a ton of work to the point where, you know, many times we got discouraged in the process and said, oh, forget it, and decided just to do an after-school program. But again, I made a conscious decision that there was no way possible I was going to let that happen. And now it's open. We have 170 students, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We're able to start 9th grade in 2013. The authorizer just came back recently, told us that we could start a K-5 program whenever we decided, so we'll be able to do K-12. And when I'm home, I'm there every day walking through the classrooms, interacting with the young people, making sure that they understand the importance of education. And they know our slogan. Our slogan is simply this. It's a very simple one. That excellence is the standard. It's not the goal. It's the standard. So as long as they do that, we'll be good.
And just to follow up on that, Dr. Fuller, so you mentioned that, you know, things work for kids and students just generally speaking, and that black kids are not any sort of foreign species, anything like that. So if that's the case, if we know best practices for educating kids, generally speaking, we know we have an example of a charter school on the panel. Why aren't more schools, school districts, state boards of education engaging in what we know works for black kids? Okay, if we know it works, why aren't we doing it?
Okay, I'm going to give I hope a very clear answer to that. First, I just want to thank Sekou for tweeting. So I don't know how many I don't know how many tweeters we got in the house, but all of y'all who tweeters out there, my handle is Howard L. Fuller. I'm in a contest with a friend of mine to get more followers. I had to get that commercial.
That's fine. Use your powers for good. Okay, so, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So
he just started.
I mean, I think the first thing we have to understand is, in answer to your question, is our kids are not the primary interests of many of these systems. This is about power and money. And it's about who controls the power and who controls the money.
All right.
And our kids may get on the agenda at some point. But we need to be clear that a lot of the discussions that we have about charter schools, traditional public schools, private schools, various things that we support like parent choice, at the end of the day, it gets down to who is in control of the flow and the distribution of the money. And if you don't get that, you don't get like what's going down in America. And the reality of it is, unless I miss my guess, history has shown us that if we don't figure out a way to take care of our own children, it is not going to be done.
That's right.
And that can be done inside a traditional public school structure. It could be done with charters. It could be done with private schools. But at some point in time,
Gotta do it.
the interest of our children has to drive the discussion. Because if that drives the discussion, then you would see us do things that work for our children. The other thing that I will say is, many black people show up for what's happening after the meeting been canceled. So that what? No, I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Okay,
It's canceled.
so what I'm trying to speak to is one of the things that we better clearly understand is the importance of blended schooling and blended learning.
That's good.
This is a train that left the station a long time ago. And if our kids don't get exposed to online technology, not that it's a cure-all, but there's so many things that are out there that would help our children that our children never get exposed to. And by the time we get exposed to it, there's something else that is now driving the train. And all I'm trying to say is that if the interest of our children is the primary thing that drives us, we will always be there with what it is that they need at the particular moment in history in which we live. Not the moment in history we used to live in, but the moment of history that we are currently living in and what that means for our children.
So, Dr. Tolson, so you work with school systems, consulted directly with teachers in terms of teacher training and development, sort of on-the-ground, in-class observations in schools across the country. When you look at effective practices, broadly speaking, or some challenges, but you can mention some solutions as well. What have you seen? What do you think is going on that maybe not, that may not be recognized as it should, but maybe something that's not necessarily expensive, but that can be tweaked to facilitate more impact?
Yeah. Well, from the standpoint of the data, there's certain characteristics of a school environment that seems to produce healthy kids, kids who are prepared for college, and kids who go on and do well in life. And so the first thing I ask schools to do is to look at key indicators of your school and see how your school compares to other things. Now, the first thing is the school needs to have an honors program, and they have to have a course offering that's compatible with the more competitive universities of your state, and so of the nation. But right now, there are schools in Georgia that have a high enrollment of African American kids who omit classes that's required for Morehouse and for University of Georgia and for a range of other universities. So theoretically, a student could be valedictorian of those schools and still be shut out of opportunities. So the first thing I would say is that you need to have reciprocity with the schools with colleges that your kids might be going to. We try to do all these designer things when it comes to black schools, Common Core standards and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to criticize Common Core standards, but when you look at the more elite schools, high schools, their standards is whatever Harvard needs to get in. So that's their standard. And so, you know, when you look at a lot of the Common Core standards and things like that, it's really elusive. And so you could miss things that's very important. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is the average GPA among all students in the nation, as measured by the high school transcript study, is about a 3.1. What I found with schools is that when their average GPA is higher than a 3.1, it usually predicts a lot of other positive indicators of the school. And when it's less than that, it usually predicts a lot of negative things. I've seen schools where the highest achieving black males, the black males that's in their top tier, has about a 2.7. And their average is closer to a 2.0. Now, if you have a school, but the thing that frustrates me a little bit is that typically when I ask the principal, what's the collective GPA of your school, they can't tell us that. And that's because we've done a lot in this country to undervalue the GPA and to place more emphasis on these tests. So they can tell you how their students are doing on their test, but you have schools that have this meal of, you know, just teachers just assigning these C's. And so they really don't have a whole lot of opportunities after high school, but they've done all these things to try to improve their test scores, including suspending kids strategically so that they don't mess up their scores. So we need to go back and look at the GPA. What does it mean to your school, and make sure that collective is good. Another thing has already been stated: the extracurricular activities. That needs to be an important part of the school environment. I tell all the principals that I work with that you need to have a homeroom study and know what % of your kids are involved in some kind of extracurricular activity. If the % is low, then you probably have a whole lot of problems with all types of other things, you know, including reckless behaviors, lack of motivations, cutting class, and all those types of things. Whereas high, we usually see positive things. Students who, and you know, studies are clear about this. Dr. Sapp already told us about this. It's clear that students who are involved in school-based extracurricular activities are more connected to the school environment. And typically those extracurricular activities have teacher advisors, which increases the motivation of the teachers and connects them in a more realistic way to the students. The last thing I'll say is schools have to get control over their discipline policies, because you can't educate kids who aren't there. You can't believe that you can suspend a kid for 10 days and they're going to reintegrate into your learning environment. If you're suspending kids for 10 days, like a lot of schools that I'll come across have, then, and you're saying that they can catch back up with your work, then I question what you're actually teaching these kids. So we have some very reckless disciplinary policies. We have this idea that black kids need a more strict and stringent discipline policy. What I've been advocating for recently is for us to get to the post-Joe Clark era of educating black kids. So we have this model that we developed in the early 90s as a reaction to the crack epidemic and the gang proliferation and all those types of things that was happening in the 90s, where we thought that a man walking through the school with a bat is the best thing for black kids, and white kids, they need something completely different. Right now, we need to think about these black kids as consumers and agents of learning. We need to understand that they need a caring and compassionate environment. I did an interview for a newspaper just yesterday, and they asked me, somebody from Chicago asked me, what effect does the violence have on these kids learning in school? And so, you know, I told her, I said, well, you know, the obvious things like post-traumatic stress disorder, difficulties with concentration, but the thing that concerns me the most is not the kids, but is the way the adults are responding to the violence, which re-victimizes the kids. So the kids are already walking through some neighborhoods that they think are pretty dangerous. They're already kind of fearful when they're walking through the door, but then they have to walk through metal detectors, and they have to walk through somebody that's looking at them with a mean mug, and they have to walk past classrooms where teachers are looking at them as though they might be a perpetrator. And so, Dr. Fuller said something important. We need to think about the needs of black kids the same way we think about the needs of any other student. So what are we doing for Columbine? What are we doing for Sandy Hook? It's the same type of caring and compassionate spirit that they need.
All right, so we've touched on a few challenges, some good insights in terms of K-12. So Dr. Wilson, when you think about the higher education landscape, broadly speaking, and your role at the White House, we know that the data is not good necessarily in higher education either, and that higher education could benefit from some reform of sorts. We had the slide earlier, 35% six-year graduation rate for black males, roughly 46% for black females, and that gender gap is across racial groups. All right, so we have a males, whether they're white, Hispanic, or Asian, males are underperforming relative to females and other groups as well. So there's a national gender issue that's going on in higher education. But when you think about black students generally in higher education, and HBCUs in particular, what are some things you think can be done, whether it's at a policy level, at a local level, institution by institution, to enhance the outcomes of black students?
Let me make two quick points on that. One in the context of higher education and HBCUs, and then one that goes beyond that context. One of the biggest revelations we had at the White House and at the Department of Education is that competition works. We had a big competition called Race to the Top at the K through 12 level. And we were working on, and that's not flawless, but it got the states going in a competition with each other about who could propose ideas to improve their system the most and the best. And even those who lost were then able to take those plans and ideas and go to other funders. And so competition, win or lose, makes you stronger. And if you think about it in terms of a race, you don't have to be in first place, but the fact that you've trained and you've run, you're in better shape than if you had never done that. So that voice of competition, and we set up some competitions on my way out of office for HBCUs to urge them to come into the competitive ranks, and therefore, and as a result, begin to leave this mode and mentality where we expect entitlements and expect to be given the money. So there's a lot more on the table to compete for. So that was one emphasis and area of reform that we were pushing, and I know we're going to see more of that, and I'm glad to be in this position to take advantage of some of it now. I think that's going to make a difference at the higher ed level, and I think it's going to make a difference for HBCUs. But I want to go beyond that, because what we were really trying to do is change the mentality. And in my case, from my White House office, we were looking at HBCU leadership, and we were saying, fundamentally, the mentality has to change, all right, in the leadership. And I mean presidential leadership, administrative leadership, board leadership. And then we started thinking, well, it's not just the HBCUs, certainly. Let me look broader. In our case, we look broader into the black community, and we're very troubled by what we saw. And I'm son and grandson of preachers. I'm sitting next to one. I just have to say, one, in my study of the history and my awareness of what was going on with HBCUs and half of them being founded by a black church, there's been a breach between HBCUs and the churches. Churches used to be big-time funders of HBCUs. There's been a divorce. There's been a big detachment. And that's, you may say that, well, the church can't provide that much money. Maybe not. Some, you look at this prosperity theology, and there's a lot of money there. But I'm thinking less of the money. I'm thinking of that, but less of that than the whole mentality, the whole culture that we have in the black church. And prosperity theology is pulling us away. And I would like more of our leaders in the pulpit to recognize that that's not the way, that is theologically incorrect. All right? And I'll end with this. One of the first things that God does with Jesus in the Bible after his miraculous birth is to establish him as an intellectual. The first miracle is not at the wedding feast in Cana. The first miracle, if you will, is when he stumps all of the scholars, 30, 40 years older, at the age of 12. So he is established early on, first thing, as an intellectual. All right? And so, in my view, that really ought to indicate and harden the connection between the black church and the black college, and we all ought to be about the life of the mind, but we're not. And so there's something awry, there's something wrong with our culture, and I think that has to be a part of the reform. We have to reform our institutions, set our goals higher, yes, but we have to also reform African American culture. American culture is sure enough flawed, but I'm concerned about African American culture, and we have to get back to the life of the mind as fundamental.
I do have a follow-up, but we do want to invite you all. There's a mic here. We're going to invite you all to line up if you have questions for the panelists. I'm going to ask them another one, but in the meantime, you all can start lining up at the mic. So, Dr. Wilson, I mean, we've talked about this last week about Morehouse being Morehouse,
Yep.
right? Could you say a little more about that and flesh that out for those who may not have been here to hear that? Because I think it connects specifically with this larger conversation around higher education, but for the parents and the students that are in the room, I think it may resonate with them.
I'll be brief because I really do. I made the statement at convocation, Morehouse must be Morehouse. And I think there are a lot of people in the room, there are a lot of people in the country, there are a lot of people in the world who have this really, really high opinion of Morehouse College. And you know the phrase, you can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much. So the presumption is that a Morehouse man is something and somebody special, all right? We have high expectations. I get a lot of amens on that one, right? You got high expectations of Morehouse. And yet I think what many of us are hearing, and even in our young alumni, is that, well, wait a minute, we have some things to fix at this institution. We need to, in accord with the competition going on in the world and in higher education, we need to sharpen our game too and get better and be more competitive, because Morehouse men need to be better equipped to compete in the world. So when I say Morehouse must be Morehouse, we must grow. There's a sense in which a crown is held over the head of this institution, which we're being challenged to grow tall enough to wear as well, just like a crown is being held over all of our alums, which we're being challenged to grow tall enough to wear. There's more work to do institutionally. Morehouse must be Morehouse.
Thank you, sir. All right, a question from the floor.
My name is Calvin Hackey.
One of our honorees tomorrow night, I might add.
While the mic is being fixed, so yes, this is Mr. Calvin Mackey, Morehouse graduate. He's being honored. Everybody don't look at him, fix the mic. Look over this way, all right? Everybody just look at him. Dr. Calvin Mackey, Morehouse graduate. He's being honored tomorrow at Candle in the Dark for his achievements in many fields. He actually speaks to our incoming freshman class doing new student orientation on a regular basis. Many of our students will recognize him from that role. Dr. Mackey, your question.
Again, my name is Calvin Mackey, and I just happen to be from the incubator of school reform right now, New Orleans.
All right.
And I was on Louisiana Recovery Authority and voted to blow up the school system and supposedly go to school reform. And today there's an article by Valerie Strauss in the Washington Post about the myth of the success of school reform in Louisiana. And I'm glad to hear y'all say that you believe in data, because what I found out about the school reform in Louisiana is that they believe in the data as long as the data doesn't contradict what they want the public to believe.
That's right.
Just like you, Dr. Sapp, for 4 years I applied for a charter school with a PhD in engineering, and each time it's turned out. There's an I-3 grant from the Department of Education where they set up competition. They give $1 million per school to seed charter schools, supposedly to seed community-based schools, and not one so-called community person has won an I-3 grant in the city of New Orleans, which has the most charter schools in a district anywhere in the nation. In New Orleans right now, 80% of the students attending failing schools still with the school reform. Even after they've taken over the schools, chartered the schools are still failing. Even in New Orleans, we have 9 KIPP schools. KIPP has, 750,000 kids around the nation. Out of the 750,000 kids, 50% of them are black, and last year KIPP admitted only 12% of the 5,800 teachers as black teachers. And so when we ask what we want for our black kids, it's the same thing rich people and white people want for their kids. And what we want in New Orleans is a culture where our kids can learn, but also a culture where the kids see people like them. And school reform in New Orleans and school choice in New Orleans, we thought it was going to be, we get to choose, but school choice in New Orleans has turned out whether or not they choose us. And the community has been totally left out. Google it. Look at the data and see it for yourself. And my question is, how do we go forward in America with the myth that school reform in New Orleans is working, and this is a model that they're taking all over the nation, especially to Detroit?
Yeah.
How do we go forward with the myth when it seemed like the 2 cities with the most school reform got the most crime going on, Chicago and New Orleans, because when black boys get kicked out of school, they have to go into the community. And in New Orleans right now, the expulsion rate and the suspension rate of black males in the charter schools are higher than what they were in the public schools. Right now, we're seeing black males getting kicked out at an alarming rate right before it's test-taking skills, test-taking time. In New Orleans, there's an elementary school that's been set up by the reformers that has 333 students, and 300 of them are special needs. That's education malpractice. And our children are being segregated not by race, but by abilities. And they've set up 3 or 4 educational ghetto schools that they're going to send all the kids to that they don't want, and send the kids to that they think can achieve to the so-called schools that they want to succeed. So how do we go forward with those facts and bring about the reform that we need for our children?
Okay, I just left New Orleans, and I've actually spent a lot of time in New Orleans. Met the last time I was there with a group of black people who expressed some of the same concerns that you just expressed. Last week I met with the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, on just this question, and the question being, why is it that there's so much pushback on ed reform coming from the black community? I think the reason is we're having 2 discussions, and I think this is happening in New Orleans. There's a discussion about ed reform, and there's a discussion about power. And the first thing we got to at least admit, prior to Katrina, New Orleans was one of the most corrupt school districts on the face of the earth. And our children, not only were being denied by Negroes, Negroes are in jail right now for what was happening in New Orleans before Katrina.
It's the truth.
So what has now occurred is that we now got a situation, brother, where at least in my opinion, there's enough hurt to go around. Because you got white people who have, and I've said this to the secretary, you got white people who come into New Orleans saying, we're coming in here bringing a level of resources and so forth that was needed in the city at that point in time. And we're trying to create new institutions that will help these kids. Some of those institutions are helping these kids. The problem is, and I've said it over and over again, it's like Fairclough's book, A Class of Their Own. When we came out of slavery, with the understanding of the connection between education and liberation. Because we did not have the capacity to create our own institutions, the missionaries came from the North. What they didn't understand was we wanted to be helped, but we didn't want to be controlled. And what has now happened is many of us in the ed reform community, and I put myself in there, have missed that point. And so what we're doing is we're coming in under the auspices that we want to help, and there are people who are helping. But what we're doing is we're doing it without including, in a power way, black people. Now, some of these black people who are out here screaming, all they want to do is get back in control of the money. They're not necessarily talking about doing things that would make a radical difference for our kids. Somehow, when you say, what are we going to do? In my view, we got to figure out how to bring those two things together. How to bring together the need for ed reform that does exist in our communities, but how to include our communities in a way where we can exercise power in a meaningful way for our children. And I've said to these reformers, a lot of y'all are arrogant. And you come in with the notion that we white people have now come in here with some solutions for you niggas. That is not what they're thinking, but that is the way it is unfolding. And then what happens is, as you know, the perception becomes the reality. And so I think you're pointing to a very real problem. I want you to know that some of us, at least I'm going to speak for myself and our organization, we're very clear on this problem, and we're trying to speak to it. But a point that you just made is one that I made to the secretary, is that when you look at how all of this money came out, and I-3 is a good one, to my knowledge, there was no black-led organization that got access to those resources. At some point in time, in order for us to be a part of this ed reform, we have to get access to resources at a level that these people are getting. Because you cannot do this stuff, man, with just, we care. We do have to care, but we need access to resources that we as a people do not now have. So I guess I would end by saying, I want to make sure that I'm real clear. The issues that were impacting New Orleans, and as you know, New Orleans and the rest of Louisiana is different. There's New Orleans, because I was born in Shreveport. There's New Orleans and there's the rest of Louisiana, right? We ain't talking about the same thing, right? So let's be clear about that. You know what I mean? You're feeling me, right? Okay, so what we have to do is we've got to figure out a way to reform what was really not working for our kids. But we got to bring some of us in a more meaningful way into that process. Or else what's going to happen is there's going to be a huge pushback. It's just beginning to develop. And that pushback is going to push away some things that are positive in the process of going at those things that are negative. And if people like you and some others are not at the table in a very meaningful way to change this, we're going to find something that could be a positive that is going to be a huge negative for our community.
I agree. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
One point of information before the next question. I just need to point out to both Dr. Mackey and Dr. Fuller that I-3 money may not have gotten to New Orleans, but I-3 money is getting to African-American organizations, and I know that because the person who runs that I-3 program is a Morehouse man, and it's Jim Shelton. and I know he's getting some money to some of our organizations. That's the truth.
Yes,
maybe
38 million came to New Orleans.
Okay, so yeah, you were talking New Orleans. I don't know that well enough.
We got 38 million for I-3.
Uh-huh.
Now that 38 million, not one community-based charter organization, community-based, not killed for somebody coming from outside.
Right.
Not one engaged community group in the city of New Orleans got the $1 million seed to seed a charter school. Dr. Sapp said he put up his own $250,000.
Sure
We
did.
thought they was bringing $38 million in. We thought it was going to be for community-based groups to do what we were supposedly wanted to do.
Right. I just didn't want anybody to think that that's the case nationally. It might be the case.
All right, now, just some quick housekeeping. In deference to Dr. Mackey being an honoree this week, I did not cut his question at all, but and we respected his perspective and so forth. As you all are asking your questions, though, because you see there's several folks lined up, if you could keep them as succinct as possible so that we can get through everyone's question. Is that fair? I need you all to nod in agreement, like on the exit row on the plane. Everybody say yes.
Exit row on the plane. That's
Okay, I don't want to be the bad guy, but I just want to be, considerate of other questioners. All right, yes, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Harold Briggs. I just moved here to Georgia from Oregon. I'm a Morehouse alum, 77. I'm a serial graduate of the University of Chicago, and I'm a social work research scholar and a teaching scholar. My question is, how can I be of help to facilitate the establishment of the incentivizing mechanisms that we need to have in order to educate African American men, in particular Morehouse? When I got to Morehouse at the age of 18, I was not ready for college. And what Morehouse did was give me a chance, you all. And through that chance, the first 18 years of my life, I couldn't speak. I was a traumatized individual. But what happened with me at Morehouse and what I acquired at the University of Chicago, I have memorialized in a case study, one-page table, and I do want to offer a few suggestions as the Associate Dean at the University of Georgia School of Social Work. There are just a few things that we might be able to do now without the money you're speaking of, but my question is, how can I help?
You can help by sharing with me, in particular, more of your ideas. Brian Marks is in this orbit too. We are working together to figure out what needs to happen at Morehouse College. If you have some things summarized there, I'll take those now, and then we'll be in touch later on.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Marcus Lee. I'm a sophomore sociology, African American studies major here at Morehouse. And my question is, I think, something that Dr. Fuller kind of hinted on. One of the greatest issues stifling the educational achievement of African Americans is the lack of cultural affirmation in the classroom and in academic discourse. In addition, when this lacking is finally addressed, the beautiful multiplicities of blackness are ignored as the black community is narrowed to being entirely Christian, largely male, entirely heterosexual, completely gender normative, and completely able-bodied. So even in spaces where African Americans are supposedly targeted, gay folk aren't affirmed, transgender folk aren't affirmed, Muslim folk aren't affirmed, black women aren't affirmed, so on and so forth. So my question is this: what initiatives do you see or would you like to see in grade school or at HBCUs that can or could culturally affirm the black community while being sure to engage the diversity that exists within our community?
Yeah, you asked a very important question. And you're right in that black kids are motivated more when they can see themselves in the curriculum. Right now, the curriculum not only omits them, it tells lies about the people that they do talk about. So they talk about Christopher Columbus in ways that's not accurate to history. And so there's different movements going on, like there's a lot of charter schools that have curriculum redesigns. There's some community initiatives, community-based organizations who are fighting this issue. But it's a battle that's been going on for decades now, and I don't see it having the kind of traction. It hadn't had the kind of traction that I would like to see. There's a lot of people in the academic community talking about this, so you'll see a lot of articles about the need for an inclusive curriculum. And I think, one of the reasons why this has been so difficult is because a lot of our history has been buried so, and a lot of their history has been propagandized in a way that it's hard for anybody to come to terms of what a good curriculum looks like. So I wish I had a better answer for your question, but the main thing I want to do is affirm your question and to let you know that I appreciate the thought that you've given to this, and I also appreciate the lens that you've given it to where it's not just a black issue, but it's also an issue of sexual orientation, it's also an issue of gender, it's also an issue of religion. And if we could create a process where our students are given more agency and they're given more say-so on the types of things that they want to learn, and they're given opportunities to be exposed to lots of different cultures and lots of different ideas and styles of living, I have no doubt that we would engage black kids and other kids in a much more meaningful way.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Robinson. I am a senior major in business administration with a concentration in finance. And my question is that I have a younger brother who attends senior high school in Maple Grove, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, and he's unmotivated. He's not as motivated because, see, the thing is that he's involved in school, he sings in the choir, and his when his work is behind, he doesn't turn to his work on time.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Okay. So he turns his work in late and stuff like that, but he's a good kid. He doesn't skip class or anything like that. So my question would be, in what ways can I motivate him to excel well in his schoolwork? Because he wants to come to Morehouse. And in order to come here, he needs to excel well in the schoolwork. That's my question.
Well, that in itself should be the motivator. If he wants to come here, he's going to have to do much better, and he's going to have to work much harder, because it doesn't get easier. It only gets a little tougher. You know, I don't mind being transparent. I brought my son here. He was here for first semester, got his grades, and he's at home. The reason why he's at home is because, if I'm going to pay this type of money for you to be here, you need to do what's necessary to stay here. You see? Now, I've already been checked and told that he needs to come back in the fall of the year. And I would love to have Marvin Sapp Jr. back here in the fall of the year. But he's going to have to earn it. And that should be the challenge with your mom, your dad, even you. You know, you want to come here, but you just can't come. You got to earn it. And if you challenge him in that way, I promise you, the rest of his days will be the best of his days.
Thank you. Man, I want to offer you a job here. That was
a yes, sir.
How you doing? My name is Mohammed Joseph. I'm a senior sociology major.
Why don't you grab the mic out of there and just hold it?
Okay. My name is Mohammed Joseph. I'm a senior sociology major from Brooklyn, New York. My question is for Dr. Tolson. You mentioned earlier that many schools and urban communities are not providing the rigorous curriculum needed to prepare the students to get into better, colleges like Morehouse and Harvard. My question is, how do you propose to implement something like this when majority of the students are coming into high school reading sometimes 3 or 4 grades below their actual level? And so how can you prepare African Americans for college when they're not really prepared for high school?
Yeah, that's a
great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's an article that I wrote for The Root called Black Reading Skills Standardized Tests Missed the Mark. And the reason why I'm referring you to that article is because there's a lot said about black people's reading, but a lot of people don't understand how that's measured. They don't understand how the NAEP test is going about getting that information. And so when educators, because I've been proposed that question by principals who say, how can we get physics at this school when we have kids who are not even reading on grade level? The first question I'll ask is 100% of your kids not reading on grade level? Because if one of them can take that physics class, then seems like to me you have the obligation to make sure they have that curriculum. I wouldn't punish any student just because the majority of their peers don't have it. But aside from that, we have to understand that people process information in very different ways, and that the way that we typically measure reading skills is a very inorganic way of looking at reading and deducing and inducing information. And so what I would tell people who make that argument is to make sure that they have different opportunities for the kids at their school to be able to read and process information in a way that's natural to their style. Once they learn how to, because we teach reading in hugely artificial ways. And I know this through personal experience because I was never a good reader. I would have been one of the ones that wasn't reading on grade level. If you measured me in the 9th grade, I have no doubt that I would measure as bad as all the kids that we're talking about that don't deserve physics. The way I learned how to read, I didn't really learn how to read till I got to college, and I noticed that I wasn't able to pass my test in college very early, and so I went to the Learning Assistance Center, and that was the first time I learned that I was reading in a way that wasn't natural to the way that I process information. So with a book, and I've written books now, but with a book, I'm not the type of person that can read a book page by page. If I'm just reading the first page, it's empty to me. I'm not processing it. So I have to feel the book first. So I have to look towards the end. I have to skim through the pages. I have to just kind of skim through first to know what I'm thinking about. And so it took me going to college to learn that deficit and get a remedy for it. Once I got the remedy my freshman year, then I went through LSU no problems. 4 years, graduated, got my master's, got my PhD, and went on to be editor of a journal. So we need to provide these same opportunities for kids in the high school level, not when they get to college. But most of all, we need to hold school administrators accountable for these kids getting the classes that they deserve, because a lot of times this reading thing is an excuse because they don't want to provide the resources in order to make it happen. As far as making it happen, I have a report here, and you can have a copy, but I have a report here called, there's an article in there called PREPS, where I give recommendations on how schools can establish that reciprocity that they need.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, hold on. Dr. Tolson, could you repeat the name of that article that you just cited, that you wrote?
The article is called PREPS. That's an acronym for...
No, I'm sorry. The earlier one, would you start it off?
For the Root.com, I have a column on the Root called Show Me the Numbers. So if you go to theroot.com, you'll see trending topics at the top. And if you click Show Me the Numbers, you'll see all of the articles I have in that series. One of them is called Black Reading Skills Reports Miss the Mark.
Okay, thank you. Sir, your question.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Robert Ross from Morehouse College, class of 81. I've been working for about 10 years with an organization that is focused on development, human development. And we're in Newark, New Jersey. I'm the chair of the board. When we started, they said we couldn't work with the kids in Newark. It would never work. That we got no support. And the Honorable late Congressman Donald Payne stepped in and said, I want to try something here. And so we are after-school development, and we took kids that self-selected. So we didn't go into the black community and say, give us your brightest and your best. We just went in and said, any kids that are interested are welcome to come on down. And it's a performing arts-based development program. We have a 95% success rate. And one of the things that has become crystal clear is that the development that we all talk about that happens so-called in a wealthy community doesn't happen in the classroom. It actually happens outside the classroom. And so what we found is that the gap that really occurs in learning really occurs with what happens when the kids go home. And so we are just trying to push policy down that road, because most of us in this room probably are taking good care of our kids and providing all kinds of developmental experiences, like the conversation that Dr. Sapp was talking about with his son. That's not happening.
We need your question.
I'm getting it.
Okay.
That's not happening in our poor communities where maybe Papa's not present and a lot of stuff's going on.
All right.
And so when you think about policy, every time there's a cut, every time there's a reshift of resources, it comes out of the after school and the development stuff that our kids need more than anybody, because they're not going to get it at home. And so I'd like you to speak to sort of how we fill that gap if the government's not going to fund, educational system is not going to fund it. How do we address that gap?
Thank you.
Well, the way we did it was I just stepped to the plate. In essence, you have to see the need, and once you see the need, you have to step to the plate and make it happen. What I learned is that it doesn't take a whole lot of money to do it. It just takes people who have a passion and time to make it happen. At Great, what we've done is we made it like almost mandatory that the parents are involved on a volunteer basis in our after-school program, so that they can interact. I mean, kids come to our school at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's 7, 8 o'clock at night, and the campus is filled with kids all day, because the kids are so engaged and so much love being on the campus, and their parents are there and spending money, make sure they have food and things of that nature, because a lot of them go home and don't have nothing to eat. You know, it's especially in the urban community. So you have to make sure that not only are the teachers engaged, that once the classroom ends, that they don't clock out and go home, but they got to stay on campus and be there too. But you got to have the parents engaged as well. And it's hard. I'm not going to make like it's easy, you know, because the majority of our students are in single parent homes. And mama be getting off work, you know, and she tired, but mom still has to make that effort to be there in order to make sure and to help us to educate and make sure all the kids or her children that are in the school have everything they need in order to succeed. So it's a partnership. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but we have to start somewhere.
Good afternoon. My name is David Bickham, and I'm originally from Mississippi. And and I think I appreciate the discourse, but I believe the question is, how do black people finance our own innovation? Because until we develop the capacity to develop the infrastructure, the pipeline, to finance our own agenda for innovation, we're going to be left in a very undignified position. It doesn't mean you don't have strategic partners, including the government, of which we are part, but how might we get about really having a conversation about financing innovation?
Thank you, sir. Very nice and succinct. I like that. Panelists.
I want to just say that question speaks to the last question that was asked, and because your question presupposes that there's something very substantial, very deep and profound that we have to do. And I think that point has been made by everybody here, and Dr. Sapp just made it, but Dr. Fuller made it extensively earlier on, as did Dr. Tolson. I think the issue is this: we have to own the process of healing ourselves. And that's why I spoke to the role of the church and how I think it's gone off the rails. We need to bring them back. If we all recognize, and there's all kinds of applause when a point is made several times here, that it's about what happens not in the classroom, or not just in the classroom, but what happens at home. Well, that's our families. That's our parents. We have, fixing this is within the province of our control. Exactly. All right? We need to understand that. there's almost $1 trillion of annual spending power in the black community alone.
Yep.
All right? Fixing this is within the province of our control. Economics, but more important than economics, values. All right? Now, what's going to reconstruct our values to even care enough to ask that question you just asked? Because as I said, the premise behind the question you just asked is, what can we do or what should we be doing to fix this? There are too many African Americans, there are too many Americans who are not even asking that question. So that's the first thing we need to do. We need to understand that to a large degree, it's on us.
Sir, next question.
And now that we all agree that it's on us, I'm Tony Bolton, Morehouse class of '79, MBA from Columbia Business School, worked in New York, worked around the world in business. My wife is a teacher, and at night she's cutting apples, making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to give to her students in the 3rd grade. So one of the things I want to underscore and then ask my question is, kids are hungry. Kids can't learn if they are hungry. So we used to, as a community, make sure everybody had something to eat. And my grandmother would open the door and say, "Did y'all eat?" And we would eat. So I just want to throw that out there. The kids cannot learn if they're hungry. Second point about the religious aspect, I'm a minister of the gospel, saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. Got all that down. I've studied.
Your question is coming, right?
It is coming.
All right.
My question has to do with the clergy divorcing themselves from the educational system. And how do we engage the clergy to come back to this premise? And what would be the next steps in that process?
Thank you, sir.
Everybody looking at me. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair, I say. I believe that the clergy, that they are coming back. The reason why I stepped into, and my wife, we stepped into the whole piece as it pertains to charter schools, was because of my mentor, Marvin Winans, who has one of the top charter schools in the country. Yeah, absolutely. Y'all clap on that. It's all right. Pastors from across the country now are stepping into the area of education, trying to make sure that we prepare our children from K through 12 so that they can come to institutions like this and succeed. Not enough of us are doing it. But now more of us, 50 and under, are coming to the table and understanding the importance of trying to reinstitute that whole concept of making sure that education is the first and foremost of importance to our children. It's a process, and I'm not going to say that we're there. But what I am saying is that we're making strides and steps, and we're talking to one another, which I think is absolutely important. And you know, I just did with Bayo and with the Walden Foundation a 6-city tour where I went into churches all over this country for free, down in the South, my God. And we had over 20,000 people to show up, turned away nightly between 500 to 1,000 people, where I did concerts for the purpose of, number one, informing people about school of choice, and number two, getting those pastors at the table so that they can understand the importance, and not only that, but kind of bridging those relationships so that they can understand that this is something that they can do as well. So it's happening. It's happening. It's happening at a grassroots level. But I can't sing at everybody's church for free. So we're going to have to figure out a way that we can do it without me having to take all my time up. You follow what I'm saying? So it's happening, but it's just not happening as fast as it should.
And it may not be happening in the places. Present company accepted, because Dr. Sapp is invested and engaged. I think we need to, in the church, with our preachers, trade in a lot of the bling for some scholarships and professorships, okay? So I favor the de-blingification of the black church, all right?
All right, and just to
That is now a word.
That's good. Just a quick sort of commercial. So in April, to your point, Mr. Bolton, we'll be having a Black Male Summit. It'll be the President's Black Male Summit. And the theme of that summit is the role of clergy in education reform. And we are going to invite clergy from across the country, of large and small congregations, to come to Morehouse and have a discussion. And we'll have actual workshops so we can tell them sort of how to, step A, B, and C, to get involved in education reform. So whether that's getting involved in your local school, starting a charter school, or just making your parishioners more aware of the challenges, that's on our agenda. So that's going to be April 5th.
Give the exact date.
April 5th. Friday, April 5th. It's going to be the
day?
Friday. I'm sorry?
It's just one day?
It's just one day.
I'm here.
All right, so you're pre-invited. Are we good? He said, you heard him say he's here.
Yeah, I'm actually preaching the day before, so I'll be here that day.
Well, there you go.
Are you going to sing for us, though?
When?
All right now.
That ain't why they asked me to come. They asked me to talk about other stuff.
So you're on tape and everything. You got contracts and agents and all that stuff.
Oh,
We're trying to get him in
Jesus.
trouble. But we do invite you all to come out. That's part of our Ministers and Lady Week. It's a sort of a week where we have ministers across the country come here. But on that Friday, that'll be one of the culminating events. And it'll be our president's first Black Male Summit. Yes, and we are, okay. So no more questioners, please line up. I'm going to try to get to you all. If I don't, please do not be upset with me. That all depends on those first 2 or 3 people. Ask your questions quick, we get further along. Yes, young lady.
My name is Jerry Winston, and I have 2 sons here at Morehouse.
Okay.
Financing is, as everywhere, an issue, and my question is, my oldest son is a junior in finance. My younger one is a freshman in economics. And we have a proposal for a sort of restructured idea of loans and donors. And I would like to just simply know, is there anyone here that I can make contact with about submitting this type of proposal for as an alternative for financing college, actually, for financing tuition through a crowdfunding type model?
Okay, very quickly, I did see 1 or 2 of my relevant staff here. I don't see them now, so I would invite you to see me right after this, and I'll hear more about your idea, and we'll go from there. All right?
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't want to talk too long. My name's Alvin Harris, class of 73, and I have had a lot of work around African American males. First of all, I'd like to say that education, and we use the term very liberal and generic, it's much like cancer. You know, you go in, you got cancer. What type cancer? Prostate, breast. When you deal with education, it is always best if there's a head point in which the student can become focused and have a goal to reach. And education for all of us is pointed toward the American dream. In 1881,
right, sir, I'm sorry. I'm going to need your
2 more seconds.
Okay.
2 more seconds.
See, y'all
okay?
see that?
2 more seconds.
Okay.
2 more seconds. And the panel may not be able to answer this.
Okay.
But what I want to say is simple. Education in African American males has to be directed toward reaching the American dream. And the problem we run into is that frequently we look at education as get it, and nobody really knows what it is. My only question to the panel is there a way that we can focus the educational process for the student the way we focus athletics for the young man on the football team?
Because right? Good. That's good one, right there.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
It's funny to me.
I think that goes to values. I think a lot of our young men are focused on being professional athletes, number one, because they see the lifestyle that results in. Number two, because they breathtakingly do not understand the low odds of it ever happening, right? And that's a problem. But we need our parents, our churches, our families in general, and our community to value education more, the life of the mind. It'll get you a lot further than bouncing a basketball, given the odds.
Dr. Brooks, good to see you, sir.
Yes, good
Your
to see you
question.
too. What'd you say about Morehouse, man? You can tell him, man, but you can't tell him much. It's our
Okay.
speakers here. My question speaks to, I practice pediatrics in Watts, and I get a lot of these young men who either, I would say, rise or fall to their expectations. So how do we get them to have high expectations? When they tell me they want to be athletes, I say, well, you know, you got to go to college. Coach is going to want smart kids. How do we work on that? And what, and secondarily, maybe the panel can look at this, what is the thing that's going to bring all our black organizations together? To work together as one. The church, I mean, the National Medical Association, the law. What is going to bring us all together to work with Dr. Wilson to have one focused goal?
That's useful.
Nothing that I know of.
I love it.
You just asked the question that black folks been asking every time they get around. Well, can we all just get together? First of all of us don't have the same interests. And we got to quit acting as if all black people, just because we black, we all either think alike or got the same reason for being on this earth. Some of these organizations you don't want to have come together. I think what we got to do. No, seriously. I mean, I'm just saying, because there ain't nothing good gonna come of it. Here's my point. I think that we got to figure out who can work together on what. And instead of trying to think we're gonna have the grand strategy, I think we need a series of small strategies. Those brothers and sisters who can work together on something, do that. Those brothers and sisters who can work together on something else, do that. Because otherwise what happens is we're going to put ourselves into a position where we're going to be immobilized because we're waiting for this grand unity that is never going to occur. Right, and instead, I mean, look, let's be clear. The further we get away from the civil rights movement, the more people was in it. It's just like I went to the Million Man March. I ain't never met a black man since then who wasn't there. So that meant it had to be the 5 Million Man March. No, here's the point I'm trying to make. When Martin Luther King Jr. got off the plane in Mobile, there were a group of Negroes who met him at the airport to say, we don't need you here because our white folks are doing okay by us. No, I'm serious. So the point I'm trying to make here is we got to figure out where there are certain points of interest that we can work on. And we need to relentlessly work on it. So like I believe in charter schools. So I chair the board of a charter school. I can't believe in charter schools and just run around, but I'm not doing any actual work. All I'm doing is theorizing and pontificating. So at a certain point in time, you have to get off the pontification stage and do some actual work with our children.
Got to.
There are people who are talking about our kids, ain't talked to a kid in years. Ain't seen one, ain't been nowhere close to one. I mean, oh my God. Don't get me started.
All right, so this may or may not be our last question, depends on how the time goes, but go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Valerie Moore. I'm a Morehouse parent, also a superintendent from Chicago, Illinois. And I want to ask the panel, well, as a school superintendent, one of the main issues that I see in education, and I'm elementary through high school, I've taught all levels and worked with all levels. One of the main issues and challenges that I see facing our African American students, not only the males, but students, is having boards of education that do not focus on kids, where they have their own personal agendas, and you look up, the money is being spent on other things besides the classroom. I always say to the Board of Education, what happens in the boardroom plays out in the classroom. And I think because our kids are underperforming, this is one main example that we do truly need to face. So I put that as a challenge for further discussion, looking at a plan that we can create so that we can share some of the great things that's happening at Morehouse with various boards of education around our nation. Will definitely be a start, because they are our power players. Regardless of the great teachers or educators or parents that are backing the kids, it has to go to the Board of Education, and you can put my name on the list as someone that would like to help out too.
You got some quick, Brother Hayes?
Yes, of course.
Quick.
Good afternoon. My name is William Hayes, class of 2007. I'm a current principal in Cleveland, Ohio. And one of the things that hasn't been discussed is just the role that districts play in the turnaround process. So I'm a principal of a new school that's turnaround underperforming, full of 65 teachers that I did not hire, 100% poverty, all students on free and reduced lunch. What role do policies and procedures at the district and state level that respond to things like Race to the Top, put an emphasis on school leaders focusing on test scores? How do we need to shift those policies and procedures to really turn around schools on the ground level? And I guess I can direct this question to Dr. Fuller.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so having been a superintendent, and my wife was a superintendent in Detroit, the reality of it is that it is extremely difficult if you don't have the support of your board to redirect anything. And the point that was made here earlier, when you're functioning as a superintendent, the one thing I learned real quickly, that I was in charge, but I wasn't in control. And until you can actually get in control of how to distribute resources, it's a political decision. So if you get, so the first thing I had to learn how to do was to count to 5, because I had 9 board members. So if you can't count to 5, you can't get nothing done. So that was my first math lesson. Can you count to 5 in order to do some of the things you're talking about doing? Because as you know, if you're in a district and everything is really formula driven by the contract, the ability that you have to redirect resources for turnarounds or anything else is going to be influenced by the nature of that contract. The question is, how much freedom and power do you have at any point in time to push a particular strategy? And one of the things that we're learning, and you're probably finding out, is, and I'm working on this now myself, trying to deal with a turnaround of our school. Turnarounds are extremely difficult. And if you don't get the complete support that you need, it is almost impossible to do these turnarounds. And that support has to be both the policy, which allows you to get rid of people, it allows you to bring in new people, you got to have resources, you got to have the ability to make decisions quickly. Because one of the things that's happening with our kids is you may see a problem, but we have to negotiate it, and by the time we get through negotiating, you got the kids in your class. That's how long it takes to make the change, because you can't make these changes quickly. So I would say that those are some of the things that I think, you know, just on a straightforward, this is what happens on the ground basis, that we have to deal with. And I think the thing that sister raised about what we're going to do about these boards is an extremely important question when you're dealing with traditional public school districts. And so, I mean, I know I'm not directly answering your question, but what I'm trying to do is to set what I think is the policy context that you're dealing with when you're trying to bring about that level of change, particularly turnarounds, because turnarounds are very, very difficult. That's why people would rather start new schools than to engage in turnarounds.
Hello, my name is Sheila Rose.
So you just went right forward, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a parent
You got it
here,
quickly.
a graduating senior. I have a question for Dr. Sapp and Dr. Fuller and Dr. Mackey still here. I don't know much about charter schools, but I like to know the difference between that and a magnet school program. You already said that the charter is based, some of them are based on business. And my sister-in-law, who is an educator in New Orleans, came up to tour my twins' high school, who were in the magnet program, math science magnet program, because she liked the way the program was, and she wanted to take it back to New Orleans.
But your core question is between charter and magnet.
Well, yeah, that's the difference between them, and if it's in New Orleans.
Yeah, first of all, we make all this stuff more complicated than it is, right? And some of that is by design.
Okay.
No, it really is. So Here's the deal. Up until 1990, when they passed the first charter school law in Minnesota, all public schools, for the most part in this country, were set up on the basis of a local school board was the only entity that could authorize and run public schools. What the charter school option did was to say somebody else other than the traditional school boards can authorize a public school. And so they started giving that opportunity to universities. They started giving it to municipalities like in Milwaukee, where the city council can authorize a charter school. A charter school is a public school. It is simply a public school that could be operated by someone else other than the school board. And all the charter is a contract. It's a contract where you set up, here's the requirements that you have to meet, ostensibly to run your school. Magnet schools, as Dr. Willie would know, really came into prominence as a way to create integration in a lot of urban areas. And so a magnet school operates inside of the traditional public school district. But what it normally does is it's like a theme. They usually have some theme. It could be the arts, it could be music, it could be whatever. And the theory of it was that it was going to be a draw, and to be as blunt as I can, to white people. Because the theory of it was, how do we keep white people in these school districts? And so that there can be integration. Because today we're having problems talking about integration because, hell, all the white people gone. And black people are talking about, well, how are we going to integrate? Well, how are you going to integrate a place that don't have no white people? When all of these, no, literally, when all of these school districts now, for the most part, are black people. So that concept of magnet schools did not work in all places. And in some places, it moved away from being a racial issue to a class question. That certain people got their kids into the magnet schools. So that, to summarize it, a charter school is a public school that can be operated and authorized by someone else other than the traditional public school system. What that has meant in many cases is that the employees are employees of the charter school, so the union contract does not follow them to the charter school.
That's right.
A magnet school operates inside of the traditional school district, and the employees are employees of the school district, and therefore where there are unions, the union contract applies.
Right. Well, my twins
Okay, I have to be respectful of time. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to be respectful of time. They'll be around. You can talk to them right after. I'm sorry. I know I'm the bad guy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right. What I'd like you to do, though, with your clickers, we're using our powers for good. This is our evaluation. So rather than filling out papers and turning it in, all you have to do is click your response. All right, so these are response options, 1 through 5. I'm going to show the slides. Don't leave. Y'all better not leave. All right, click. I'm going to show you 5 quick questions.
Super. Thank you so much. It's going to be good.
Okay, as the clickers are being redistributed by my wonderful team. Yes, so the poll is open. All right, so we're going to go 1 through 5, strongly agree, strongly disagree, or strongly agree, okay? I learned new information. Click in, your response. We have 2 right here, 2 in the front, 3 in the front.
Oh, God. My staff.
Okay, this will be quick, y'all, but this is how we're going to use our technology powers for good. All right, so you 3 click in really quick. You learned something new. Agree, disagree. All right, good. Here we go. Next. I will share information from this event with others. I will share information from this event with others. Just click in. All right, anything you learned that you think you might share? All right, doing good, doing good. Let's hit 120. All right, appreciate that. Next. I would like to learn more about education reform. So you heard a snippet, and each one of these gentlemen could probably talk all day about education reform. Would you like to learn more? Okay. All right, I'm going to cut it at 120. There we go. I have a better understanding of charter schools. A better understanding of charter schools.
It's a good thing you had that question.
This is right on. Dr. Fuller, you set me up with this one.
See how well I
Straight
did.
up. I have a better understanding.
Almost the last one. That should be. I like the format of the session, meaning the first part was symposium, second part was more town hall. So it was sort of two parts where you all ask questions. You like the format? All right, we'll take that one. And then last, I like using the clickers.
I did the induction ceremony.
All right. I like using the clickers. Go ahead.
Voting in ceremony.
All right. Okay, now I just want to ask our president, Dr. Wilson, if he just give us some closing remarks as we transition out. We had a rich discussion. This is the beginning, not the end. We know that education reform and best practices are an ongoing journey, if you will. But nonetheless, we want to stay persistent and engage in the conversation. So, Dr. Wilson, closing thoughts.
This has been a rich experience. I don't need to belabor it. I think it's been a good indication of the kind of brain power there is at Morehouse and the kind of enriching learning experience some of your sons in here are having now, and some of you have heard about at Morehouse. We do this a lot, and we're going to do it more. I want to thank you all for coming, and as you move through the rest of the weekend, you need to be thinking, happy birthday to Morehouse College and many, many more. Exactly. All right? Thank you.